Stuart Varney grilled Trump here on the stolen election lies. You could tell he's frustrated. You could tell he's exasperated. You could tell he's just like, move on, dog, move on, move on, move on. You're only hurting yourself. Let's watch and then I'll react.
At CPAC, your speech was banned from YouTube. Second year in a row that's happened.
Yeah.
What can you do about that?
Truth.
Well, what can you do?
I talked about a rigged election, which it was 100% rigged. I mean, look at what happened in Wisconsin. Look at what's happening in Georgia. All the things they're finding. Truth to vote. Look at all the hundreds of thousands of votes. So they don't like it, and they ban it. And of course, Fox is afraid to put it on. But
wait a second.
maybe I got through it.
Wait a second. If we go into 2022, the elections, and 2024, and you're still looking back to the election of 2020 and saying that you really won, I don't think that's very good for you or the Republican Party. You want to comment on that?
Well, I actually think it is good for me. And I think if we don't put out all of the crooked things, and we know what they are, that you won't win in 22 and you won't win in 24, if we don't get to it. So I think it's the opposite, actually. And I talk nothing about, nobody talks more about the future
you
than
think
I do.
That 2022, you think that 2022 and 2024 are all about the 2020 election? Really?
No. I think for us to win the election, we have to know how they cheated, because otherwise they'll cheat again. And we do know how they cheated. And the Republicans and Democrats should, but they won't. Republicans have to do something about it, or they're going to be very disappointed. And nobody talks more about the future than I do. But you have to learn from history also, and you can't let it happen again, Stuart.
All right.
Trump is too dense to understand that Stuart Varney is literally trying to help him. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. So let's go through that. Now, I will say the whole, his CPAC speech being banned, I'm totally against that. I mean, you can't just... So the rigged election conspiracy theory, it is a conspiracy theory. It's totally false. I'll get to that in a second and give you more specifics on it. You guys have heard me give the specifics before. But you still shouldn't ban it. If you're going to ban that, okay, well then did 9/11 conspiracies have to go? Probably. The Sandy Hook one obviously gets you booted. But then what about the JFK conspiracy, which a lot of intelligent people who have looked at the evidence have said it wasn't just a lone gunman, it wasn't just Lee Harvey Oswald. There's a lot of weird stuff going on there, and then it's just, the slippery slope of all these different... What are you going to do? Just only the official correct position is allowed. It's like, correct, by the way, I put that in quotes. It just, you can't do it. You can't have a ministry of truth. You can't, because who's going to fact check the fact checkers? People have their own biases. You got to just let it be, man. You got to just let it be. And they're not doing that. So I disagree on that front. Now, having said that, yes, the rigged election stuff is easily disproven. It wasn't even difficult. They tried in real time. It's not like now, after the fact, they're like, hey, I think it's rigged and maybe we should have done something to try to prove that. They tried to prove it over and over. There were 60-plus court cases, and Trump lost almost every single one of them. And by the way, they lost. It's not like, oh, these are all Democrat judges. Some of the judges were Republican-appointed judges by George W. Bush. Some of them were Trump-appointed judges, and they were like, you don't have a case here, dog. You lost. www.getoverit.net. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then, of course, the Arizona audit is the best example of this. The Trump people were convinced if you audit the vote in Arizona, Trump is going to win. And then what happened? Not only did Trump not win, Biden won by more votes than he won by on Election Day. And everybody who thinks, because one of the main reasons why people think, hey, maybe this is unfair and it's rigged, is because the way the voting happened on Election Day, you had Donald Trump was up for a very long time. He was up for a very long time. So a lot of people thought, oh, he's definitely going to win. He looks like he has a giant lead right now at the time where most people went to sleep on Election Day. Now, here's the problem with that. You had the votes that were counted on Election Day first in most of the states were from the Election Day. It's been proven historically, Republicans like to vote in person more on Election Day. So those votes are going to be more biased in favor of the Republicans, the ones that are from Election Day and then counted immediately. So it's going to be more biased. It was called the Red Mirage was the scenario. And then as soon as you count all of the mail-in ballots, the mail-in ballots historically lean very Democratic. And so if they counted on the day first, and then they count the mail-in ones after, Well, what happens is it looks like the Republicans are leading by a lot, and then the Democrats charge back because most of the mail-ins are for Democrats. Now, you might say, well, after the fact now, Kyle, you're giving this explanation, and that's not, that seems like a rationalization for what happened because Trump really was the one who won. Wrong. Go back and watch. I was on Joe Rogan's podcast. We did an election day special. It was myself, Joe Rogan, and Tim Dillon. Before any of the votes were counted, I said in no uncertain terms, here's how it's likely to go down. You will have the Republicans look like they're up by a lot from the voting on election day. And then as soon as they count the mail-ins, the Democrats will surge ahead. That's exactly what happened. I said it beforehand. And guys, I'm not some sort of super genius here. I just read all the relevant material on the election. So this is all it's all obvious. If you go back and you're willing to be open-minded and you're willing to evaluate things fairly, you're going to come to that conclusion. So it's not true. You lost the election. Get over it. You lost. And Varney's pressing him. But again, the only reason he's pressing him is for this very simple reason. He knows it's not good for Trump and it's not good for Republicans, and it makes it less likely they win the more he talks about it. And I love how Trump, when really put in a corner, he's like, Stuart, nobody talks more about the future than I do. As every speech he gives, he can't help but bring up rigged election, talking about the past. Nobody talks more about the future than I do, Stuart. Nobody does. Stuart Varney knows it's not good for you. It's not good for Republicans. We covered a poll on this exact issue. You know what percentage of Republicans want Republican politicians and candidates to talk about the 2020 election? 15%. 15. If it's 15% among Republicans, what the hell do you think it is among Democrats? Probably 0. What do you think it is among independents? Probably 7%. So nobody wants to talk about this. People care about the economy and jobs and healthcare and, now the potential for nuclear war. This is what people care about, and he can't help himself. So look, Trump's Achilles heel is that he can easily self-destruct by not being able to get out of his own head. People don't, maybe some of you remember this, but going all the way back to 2016, the reason why Trump was really able to break through and destroy the Republicans in the primary and then eventually win the election is because he had much more of the pseudo-populism and finger on the pulse enough to bullshit to people to tell them what they wanted to hear. So the 2016 Trump candidacy was the stronger of all of them. Then in 2020, he sort of lost sight of that, and it became more ego-driven. He sounded more like a Fox News grandpa. He had lost the pseudo-populism after governing for 4 years like a standard establishment Republican. And then now, he's downgraded even again. I even think the 2020 version of Trump, when he was campaigning, was better than this current version. And so even though he's leading in every poll in the Republican primary and he's tied with Biden, he could self-destruct by only, talking about this nonstop, focusing on this nonstop, because you're not going to move people on it, dog. You've been trying relentlessly. And only 15% of even Republicans say, yeah, talk about that. So I think Stuart Varney really is just trying to help him when he's like, dog, shut the fuck up. Move on. Get over it. Let's talk about, policy. So anyway, in a weird way, I guess, you should be rooting for Trump to keep talking about this because that is the thing that's guaranteed to hurt him the most. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.